Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now from Reston, Virginia, is the founder of the Media Research Center, the nation's leading media watchdog organization, Mr. Brent Bozell. He is the author of the brand new book, Colluding: How the Media Stole the 2012 Election and How to Stop Them from Doing It in 2016, co-written by Tim Graham. And Brent, it's so good to see you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you for having me on.
Sure. Well, going into this project, you said you knew there was an obvious pro-Obama slant in the media, from lying to covering up Benghazi to censoring every Obama scandal. You expected it to be bad. What did you find out, Brent, that surprised you the most?
Well, here's the interesting thing. I didn't want to do this book. When the publishers first approached me on the concept, I thought it was so self-evident, the bias, that there wasn't going to be anything that hadn't been covered already. But my colleague, Tim Graham, wanted to take a crack at it, so he went off and did several months worth of research. When he came back, the information that he put together was shocking and startling, so much so that we threw ourselves into this book, because what you saw was something, when you put it all together, it was far worse than we thought it was. This was an effort by the national news media, deliberately, conscientiously, to deliver the presidency to Barack Obama.
Now, your book contains evidence of how the left is using the media to manipulate public opinion and elect presidents. How did the media steal the election for Obama in 2012? You used the word collusion. Explain.
Yeah, you know, collusion was a tough word. Stealing an election is a tough phrase. And at first I was uncomfortable with it. But then when we looked at the research, I stood by the statement and by that headline. Look, you can look at it a whole series of different ways. Let's look at one example. The scandal coverage. With every single Republican who appeared on the scene in 2011, then 2012, in the primary process, every single one had a major negative story attributed to them, which became national news. Things like a rock on a farm, on a ranch that the Perry family used in 1988 was a national news story. Herman Cain and the alleged affairs that he had. Even a national news story on who Karen Santorum was dating before she even met Rick Santorum. Now, take that over to the Democratic side of the aisle. Not only was there a battery of real scandals involving Barack Obama, whether it's Fast and Furious, Solyndra, the GF Global thing, the idea of hiring communists as part of your inner circle, so many scandals. Not only were they not covered, but this book will give you the actual statements of top reporters filing stories saying this man was free of scandal. They actually presented to the American people the idea that there was no scandal involving Barack Obama, never mind covering them.
Brent, is there any one journalist that you would single out for being, say, masterful at colluding in 2012? Which reporters had the worst coverage in your view?
Well, it's hard to tell because my argument would be that very few of them could even call themselves reporters. Look, a reporter reports. These people weren't reporting; they were advocating. So how many bad reporters were they? They were all bad. They did not make the effort to balance their news stories. They made no effort to do serious investigative journalism. Have we gotten to the bottom of a single Obama scandal, a single controversy, Fast and Furious, Benghazi, whatever it might be? They refuse to report these things. They refuse to cover them. So I'm going to say they're all bad. Now, some were laughingstocks, like Chris Matthews.
Looking at the media's coverage of the Obama administration's recent decision to delay implementation of the Obamacare employer mandate, a huge setback for the White House, considering that the biggest blow to the president's signature legislative accomplishment actually came from the administration itself, is it safe to say that that collusion is still ongoing? How do you view the media's coverage of this story?
Oh, Kathleen, it absolutely is. Look, the Obama campaign did not stop on Election Day. They have continued in campaign mode. So for the media, they're doing the exact same thing they were doing before. And we pointed this out in the book that this is exactly what's going to happen. There is a deliberate decision to censor news from the American people if it goes against the narrative of the Obama presidency and the Obama legacy. And what you gave was a perfect example of this. How could that not be news? How could the IRS scandal have disappeared as a news story? How could it not be news what's going on in Benghazi, which we haven't resolved? So many of these things are absolutely unquestionably news stories, and the media are deliberately avoiding them. And that's censorship.
Critics say that the president has no agenda for his second term. Why don't we hear more about this from the mainstream media?
Well, I think he does have an agenda, but it's not an overt agenda. It is an agenda that he's doing through regulation, and that should be covered. You know, when the Congress votes down cap and trade, and the administration says they're just going to do it through regulation, you got to scratch your head. When you see these scandals with the IRS, you're seeing a complete abuse of presidential power. These things are stories. So yeah, I think they have agendas, but I think they're very underhanded.
Brent, after it was learned that the Department of Justice was spying on reporters, the New York Times, of all publications, wrote an editorial eviscerating the White House. Is there a sense at all that the media is beginning to turn ever so slightly on the president?
I don't believe so. Look, when the story came out about the White House going after journalists themselves, there was a lot of speculation on this, and the conventional wisdom was that even the news media were now going to see what this administration was capable of. I suggested then, and I think that the evidence has borne it out, that this was going to be nothing but a lover's spat. It was going to be covered and then ignored, and it has been left. It's been left behind. Have you seen any coverage?
Okay, I'd like to get your quick take on how you grade the major television networks, lightning round, if you will, beginning with NBC and MSNBC.
Probably the worst, because NBC should denounce MSNBC, but they become two peas in a pod.
What about ABC and CBS?
ABC and CBS are deliberately involved in the act of censorship. Both of them are guilty of not covering stories that hurt the Obama narrative.
Mm-hmm. And CNN? What kind of grade would you give CNN?
CNN has become a laughingstock. It used to be a serious journalism enterprise. No one's watching it, and the reason no one's watching it is because there's nothing serious there.
And what about Fox? What kind of grade would you give Fox? Let me guess.
Well, if there's one reason why it's public enemy number one, it's because it's the only network that covers the news.
Brent, Congress returns to Washington this week to face immigration reform. The House says that the Senate bill is a non-starter, and there's growing speculation that maybe we won't have an immigration law this year. Does the GOP risk being branded as obstructionists and the party of no in the media, and how does the party combat this?
Always. When there's a divided government and the Democrats are the minority, they're always courageous. When it's a divided government and the Republicans are in the minority, they're obstructionists. It happens every single time. What the Republicans have to do is take on the media.
Yeah, so are conservatives destined for political death if the public doesn't act? And how does the public stop them from doing in 2016 what it did in 2012?
Well, conservatives have to be a lot smarter with the news media, and they have to understand that the news media is their biggest problem. If they can't get their message to the American people free of these distortions, then it doesn't matter how good their message is. I do believe, however, that there are ways around it. There is this growing entity called social media, where you can communicate directly with the public. The Romney effort ignored it completely. The Rove effort ignored it completely. The Obama effort spent tens of billions, and it worked.
Last question for you, Brent, is on a totally separate topic. What is your take on Edward Snowden, and is the media manipulating American opinion as to whether he is a traitor or a hero?
Well, I think it's the difficult one. I think he began this thing as a pop star hero, but I think the more people are seeing what he's doing, the more, even in the press, they're recognizing that what this man has done is very, very harmful to America.
All right. Again, the book is called Collusion: How the Media Stole the 2012 Election and How to Stop Them from Doing It in 2016. Brent Bozell, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.